This video, I am going to make the header and sidebar reusable so that we could reuse them into the other pages. For example, if we create the labels page, we want to reuse the sidebar and the header. So let's begin. In the root directory, I am going to create another folder, uh, common, and in the common, I will create a file, header.html, and also I will create another file that would be sidebar.html. So in the header, I would just go to the index.html file and I will find the header part and I would paste it into the header. So this part is responsible for making the header visible. So I would just cut it and I would paste it into the header.html. And instead of that, I would just add a placeholder for the header. So for that, add header placeholder. So later, we will load the header into this element dynamically through the JavaScript. We will be using the Ajax to load the header into this placeholder. Next, I need to cut the sidebar and I need to move it into the sidebar.html. And again, I would create a placeholder for the sidebar. Okay. So if you look at the layout right now, it does not look good. The header and the sidebar has gone. So now we have to write down the script that would get the content for the header and sidebar, and it would then load the content into these placeholders one by one. So before moving forward, I would create another folder for the JavaScript in the assets folder. So in the JavaScript folder, I would create another file, main.js, or maybe you can call it common.js because we would be using the same JavaScript file in every page. So next, I'm going to add that script, that file into the index.html. So type script source and pass the source of the common.js that is inside asserts.js and common.js. Okay, so now from this, I would move the common code from this file into the common.js. For example, search key up. So this one is used in the header. So I would just copy it and move it into the another file. So all of these functions belongs to the common.js. Let's just cut it. And next, I'm going to paste it in the common.js. And as this is too much code, so I would just add some comments. And in the comments, I would say header code start. So within this comment section, we would have only the JavaScript code related to the header. All right. So whenever body is loaded, this function would be called. So in this function, I would get the content of the header.html and then I would load it into the header placeholder. So first of all, let's get the content of the header. So for that, I would use the JavaScript native fetch API to make the Ajax call. For that, type fetch. And here you need to pass the path of the file that you want to access. For example, we want to access the header.html inside the common. So I would pass the path of the common. So also keep in mind that we have to provide the path from the directory where the HTML file exists, where you have added this common.js file. For example, this common.js file has been included in this file index.html, and index.html exists in the root directory. So that's mean we have to provide the path that would start from the root directory. So we have to consider the root directory to provide the path of the header.html. So here I would say I need to go to the common slash header.html. And from there, after we get it, I want to resolve that promise. And whenever we get the content, I would receive that content into this. Also, whenever this promise is resolved, we get a response. From that response, we need to return either JSON or text. In this case, we need only text. And then in the next, then I would receive the HTML text that I just returned from the first then function. And from here, just in order to make sure that we got the HTML, I just want to make it alert. For that, just type alert HTML text. And let's see. So far, nothing happened. Let's see what's going on. I'm going to add alert here as well to see if this function is being called or not. I'm going to add this function into the event listener that I would register now on the window. For example, document dot add event listener. So on the document, I would create an event on load. And here I would try to test it to see if that works. So I'm loading, it is not working. Let me try to add on load. Or maybe window dot. Okay, so now we have registered an event on the window that it would call our function whenever window is loaded. So instead of doing an alert, I would just call this function on body load. So whenever window is loaded, it would call this function, and instead of naming it body load, I'm going to say on window load. So okay, so now I'm going to remove the alert, and you can see we are already getting the alert for the content of the header.html. So now we can utilize that HTML and then we will fill it in the header placeholder. So now first of all, we need to get the placeholder for the header element. For that, let's use header placeholder is equal to document dot query selector, and here I would say I need header placeholder, and then in the header placeholder I want to add inner HTML is equal to HTML text. Okay, now you can see that the header has been loaded because of this. So if you comment out this line, then you will see the header would be gone. So if I uncomment it, the header would be visible again. So this is how we are now loading the header dynamically into the placeholder. Now we have to repeat the same process to show the sidebar as well. So before doing that, I'm going to refactor this code to move this chunk of code into another function to make it more simple. So the function name would be load header. And then I will move this content into this function, and then I will just call this load header function. And now let's see. You can see the header is still working. Next, I need to create another function that would be load sidebar. And the all of the code would stay same. We just need to change some things. For example, the path of the file would be sidebar.html. And here, instead of header placeholder, it would be changed to the sidebar placeholder. And similarly here, I need sidebar placeholder. And so now it did not work. Let me see what's going on here. We have sidebar.html. We have text. So in the index.html, let's make sure we have the correct selector for the sidebar placeholder. So the difference was that we were using a small b, but there is a capital B in the sidebar. So let's fix it and save it. Okay. Let's alert it to see if we are really getting the sidebar content or not. No. The issue was that we did not call this function. So let's call this function as well. Now it would work perfectly fine. You can see that this time we are now loading the header and sidebar dynamically through the Ajax in JavaScript. And the benefit of this approach is that we can now reuse the header and sidebar in multiple pages. So whenever you create a new HTML page, you don't need to copy paste the header and sidebar every time because it would be very difficult task to maintain the header and sidebar in every HTML files. For example, suppose you have 100 HTML files, and in case if you have to change one minor thing in one in the sidebar, then you may have to open every HTML file among those 100 files, and you have to go into them one by one to make that change in the sidebar. So that would be a lot of time-taking task, and you can also do mistakes while doing that process. So with this approach, it does not matter that how many HTML files you have. It does not matter even if you have thousands of the HTML files. It does not matter at all. It would still be using the same sidebar and header. So for example, if there are thousands of HTML files which are using the same sidebar, and if you make a change in a sidebar, you just go to the sidebar.html, you make that change, and that change would be reflected in all of the pages immediately. So that was the main purpose and benefit of this approach.